Hello guys, it's Chamaster. Today I'm going to be starting up a new Beyblade series of sorts. Reimagining Beyblade Burst. So what is this series going to be, and why am I making it? So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the different seasons of Beyblade. I'm planning on making this a 6-part series, basically, to go through all of Burst and basically change beys to how I think they should have been made, and even adding in some new beys to certain lines if I think they should have been there. With that said, though, I don't want to discredit Takara Tomy. I actually think Takara Tomy did a great job with Burst. I think they did really well. And this is personally just like it's just a subjective thing, It's just what I think Burst should have been, in my opinion. So again, I'm not trying to discredit them, and this is just my interpretation of it. And with that, I'm also not going to be going over every single bey, while I will be looking at every bey, in my own time when I'm making these videos, like in terms of scripting and stuff. I'm not going to mention every single bey. If I don't mention a bey, that basically just grounds to assume that I think it's fine. Which, there are a lot of beys like that, especially in these earlier seasons. I think a lot of them are fine. This first part, there's really not many beys at all that I'm going to be changing up. I'm largely going to be leaving most of them the same, with only a few. It's basically, this episode is just more of an introduction to everything and how it's going to be set up and why I'm making it and all that fun stuff. But yeah, Takara told me did a good job, so let's just build on that effectively and change some things whenever I think they should be changed. So, as far as kind of the rules go, I guess not even rules, but I guess certain things I should mention here in this first part. First up is, I guess, the budget. So, I'm a small YouTuber, and there really isn't a whole lot for me to do in the ways of commissioning stuff, unfortunately. I don't really have any drawing or modeling talents either, so I can't really do stuff myself. And again, I don't really have anything for commissions. Like, this would take a ton of money to do all of this stuff that I have planned for all these episodes. So, there's not going to be any drawings or models of any of these ideas that I have, unfortunately. The one good thing about this, though, which, I mean, it's definitely negative overall, but I guess the one good thing is that means I can get these episodes out more frequently, which is great. I mean, I can get them out, I'm going to do 2 a month until we're done, which is going to be early July, before Beyblade X comes out. So yeah, we'll get them out decently fast, but again, unfortunately, there will not be any, concrete designs or anything for some of the new stuff I'm coming up with. Although, if for whatever reason, I don't think this will happen, but if for whatever reason anyone wanted to draw or even model these, which I don't imagine would happen, but if anyone does, feel free to, of course. Don't think that'll happen, but I just want to mention that now. So yeah. Next up is kind of just the style of videos. So obviously, there isn't much for me to do in terms of visuals, because I don't have any concepts or models to show, so I'll basically be kind of going over the beys physically, showing different parts of them, and kind of just explaining what I think should be changed and pointing out certain things with certain parts. So, kind of like how my discussions go, where I, largely sit behind a camera with a beys, with the beys just kind of sitting there, but then I will interact with them. Sometimes when I want to highlight something important, that's kind of how this is going to go. And the last thing, probably the most important part about this series. How will I be changing beys or adding new beys to lines? So, I was thinking about how to do this, and I feel like I could, care about, everything, color of the beys, or even, the release schedule. That would take a lot of extra, planning. And I said I had 6 episodes planned. I could always go back to do a 7th or even an 8th episode for some of these things if this series, for whatever reason, catches on, and people really want to know, every sort of detail I could even, offer. Then I could do that in the future. But for now, I'm going to be leaving that stuff out for, overall design or just how I would release them. The main things I'm going to be focusing on are parts. What parts should a bay have? Also, gimmicks. So, obviously, if I think a bay's gimmicks are bad, or just maybe don't fit, I could change them. Or maybe a bay doesn't have any gimmicks. I could add gimmicks to the bay. As far as part swaps go, I can, of course, choose a part that, again, I don't think really fits, swap it out with a pre-existing part, or an original part that I conceptualized. So as far as these conceptual things go, I will have to explain them and kind of how I'd imagine them, because obviously, again, there's no visuals for it, but, hopefully it works fine enough. I'll try to get my point across, maybe compared to some other parts to, at least give a good description of what they would look like. And, of course, adding bays onto the lines. So this is not something that's going to happen in this episode, but in future episodes I will be looking at certain lines, and when there's maybe a certain motif that's left out, and I think it should not have been left out, I will talk about it. I'm not going to be coming up with any of my own original motifs. Again, there's always room for more episodes after the original 6 that I could always come up with, potentially some more motifs, we'll see. But for now, it's just going to be basically evolutions to certain motifs that I think should be included in lines, and those will be entirely uniquely conceptualized. Well, obviously I could use, pre-existing parts to add on. There will have to be a lot of, stuff done to how I would imagine them, basically. So yeah. It's basically going to be a full-on reconceptualization of Burst. And as time goes on, there will be more and more changes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to Burst. That might sound bad as I'm changing more as time goes on, but the bays just get more and more complicated. It's harder to really pinpoint things with these, earlier bays, but when you get to later stuff, yeah, there's gimmicks for everything and a lot more parts in general, so for those, yeah, it's a lot easier to pick apart different things, but with these, yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about them. So, yeah. So with the entire intro to which I know is a very long intro, I'm not going to be repeating this in every part, so this will be kind of the reference point for all of my rules and stuff. So, yeah. And again, this is just my own interpretation of what I think Burst should be. So in this episode, I will be covering, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I will be covering both single and dual layers in this episode. Because I really don't have a lot to change here. I think that they did a really good job with both of these lines. And there's only a couple bays per line that I really want to do anything with, but there are still some. So this is kind of my trial run episode, just to kind of show what's going to be happening in these episodes. Of course, that and also my very lengthy intro to explain everything, but yeah. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the bays themselves. So starting off, of course, with the single layers, our first bay ever to change is going to be Deathscyther Oval Excel. Deathscyther is a good bay. I think the layer and disc work very well for this bay. And while you could argue, okay, the contact points and whatnot, okay, they're not enough like an attack type and it was use or stamina. But again, I'm not going to be going over all that stuff, and it's still fine. It's early bursts. This stuff happens. I don't see that much of a problem with it. But the driver. This is one thing that I do actually want to change. So I don't think Excel was a bad choice. It's not a bad choice at all. However, I still think that there was something else they could have done. I think they should have just made this bay fully unique. I don't think there should have been any reused parts at all. And I think the new driver should have been called Kinetic. This will be kind of taking place, not taking place, what am I saying? It'll be taking after Jaggy, not nearly as extreme as Jaggy was with how, the lines and stuff worked. But it'll be sort of a little bit star-shaped, a little bit of, kind of some grooves on here to make it, again, slightly star-shaped, but not nearly like the lines that Jaggy has. It's really not even going to be that much different from Excel, to be honest, just some lines and ridges here. It's not that crazy, but still, it would probably change up its performance a bit, and again, it's a new part. So, that's how I change it, Deathscyther Oval Kinetic. I'll explain the part name at the end. Well, at least why I want this name in particular, but, well, kind of. Okay, so let me explain the actual part name, but I'll explain why I'm using the K driver, I guess you could say. So, kinetic. Kinetic is, of course, meant to be kind of a force, and that's kind of all there is to it. It's an attack type. I don't know why the name kinetic was never really used in anything with Burst. I know they used it for Christ Satan's localized name, Kinetic Satum, but we're not talking about Hasbro at all. So I always found it weird that, Kinetic is a really cool name, could have been a cool driver name in my opinion, and we're going to be doing that here. So yeah, that's kind of all there really is to it. Just works well as an attack driver name in my opinion, and yeah, again, it kind of gives a precursor to Jaggy, which eventually it would get that driver. And again, it makes Deathscyther just feel a little bit more unique. Alright, our next bay is going to be Chaos Oval Gyro. This is probably the most unique case because there's actually two molds of this layer. There's this mold right here, which has the C in the middle, and then there's the Random Layer Collection version, which does not have it. This one's more in line with the dual layers in some regards, with how the C is and stuff. This is more aligned with the single layers, like it should be. I think they should have kept this design, and I don't imagine they keep the black plastic, unfortunately, but that's fine. That's fine to keep as a Random Layer Collection exclusive. But still, they should have used this specific model, in my opinion, over this one. Also, taking it apart, I think the gyro driver is perfectly fine, and I'm actually fine with the brown as well, but oval, on a stamina type, just doesn't cut it, in my opinion. So what I would change it out with is actually spread. I think spread just works perfectly as a kind of a stamina disc in a lot of ways, and yeah, I mean, Chaos, Spread, Gyro, I think that this would be a much more sensible bay right here, and again, using kind of this model here. Again, it's a bit of a unique case because it does have two molds, but yeah, I do think the first one should have been used here, the second one just should not have been made. And then Spread, yeah, it just works better as a stamina type in my opinion. Oval was always a really weird choice to me. So when thinking about other discs, Spread just kind of stuck out as something that, like, yeah, I think this would make for a good stamina disc. And yeah, there's really not a whole lot to this one. Next up, we have Dark Deathscyther, Force Jaggy. Yep, both Deathscythers are going to be in this video, and this also is one of our only two dual layers that I'm going to be changing. So, Dark Deathscyther, what's up with it? So I think Dark Deathscyther's layer and also the Jaggy driver are both completely fine, but again, the disc. They used Force, which isn't even a bad disc, honestly. But I kind of think it'd be cool if all original 6 bays, which I guess it's original 4, but still Deathscyther and Wyvern, they're right there with the original 4, so I think it'd be cool if all 6 of them all had unique parts for both the, single and dual layer versions. Deathscyther is really the only thing stopping it from happening. But also, I think, yeah, there's a really good chance for a unique disc here. So, as far as what I would model the disc after, it'd be somewhat similar to Boost. Basically, instead of 6 blades, it'd be 8 blades, and they'd be, so obviously smaller, but there'd be kind of like a little angle on these in like the middle instead of being smooth. And then maybe these parts would be slightly more pointy, but not very much. So yeah. Not a crazy disc or anything, just something that to me would look good with with Deathscyther. I'd call this Exploit. So the reason why I'm calling it Exploit, first up that gives us an X disc, which again I'll explain later. But also, I think Exploit just works well for Deathscyther. Of course I will be using, like I said, it's the X disc. I'm not calling it Exploit as in, like, starts with an E. Like a lot of things in Beyblade Burst, it'll start with an X. I don't know why it's like that, but that's just kind of something that they've done. So I'll be sticking to that theme. So why the name Exploit? That feels like kind of an awkward name. But early in the anime, the owner of Deathscyther actually would cheat. He cheated a little bit in the early days of Burst. And I think this would be kind of a cool reference to that. I think, exploit, kind of goes hand in hand with cheating. So I think it'd be kind of a cool name. And again, it gives us the X disc. So yeah, I think it just works. And also, again, Deathscyther having its own unique disc would be very cool. And we get to our final bay. Fang Fenrir Boost Jackie. I don't like the stock combo for this thing at all. This layer was clearly just made to sell the Dual Cyclone DX set, and they just threw random parts on it. It's not the craziest layer, but I don't think the parts particularly fit on this thing. It's a very kind of bland attack type. There isn't a whole lot going on with it. Not the strongest thing, it's definitely more of a stamina defense type of layer, considered an attack type, so let's make it a little bit more interesting. First up, the disc. This is a completely new disc that I'm coming up with, and it's going to be called Entropy. Entropy is kind of a physics term with energy and stuff. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but basically, it's fitting for an attack type disc. That's all you need to know, the name. Also gives us an E-disc, which I'm going to explain in a minute, and why that's important with the other parts that I mentioned specific letters for as well. But anyway, how I'd make this sort of new disc. So basically, it would be a four-sided disc, so not like Boost. It'd be kind of made to mimic Fang Fenrir in a way. It'd be a four-sided disc with four kind of longer blades, again, longer than Boost. And yeah, it'd basically mirror this, and they'd be very, very curved, very rounded is the word I'm trying to get at here. It'd be a very round disc with four different blades, but again, it's still kind of be angled in such a way to where it'd be definitely an attack type disc, but just not like an overly wild looking one. The driver I would just swap out. I don't think Jaggy fits with this bay, so I would actually swap it out for Zephyr. I know this is Zephyr Dash, but it fits well enough with this bay in my opinion, so yeah. So yeah, you then, of course, would have Zephyr, a new disc, and then Fang Fenrir. So why do I think this should be the case? So again, Fang Fenrir, very kind of rounded attack type. It would then get a disc that's a lot more, specially made for it, and it can still be used in other stuff, but it just kind of helps with the design. And also Zephyr. It's technically a balanced driver, and this thing would probably be a balanced type in that case, but Zephyr is a lot more chill. I think Zephyr on something like Fang Fenrir makes a lot more sense, which is why I went with it. And again, with a new disc, it pairs even better. So, to me, this would just make oh god, I can't talk. It'd make Fang Fenrir a much more, I don't want to say unique base, it's not like crazy unique, but it definitely fits a certain niche a lot better. And it also makes the set worthwhile, at least a little bit more. Because instead of just getting a new layer with a couple random parts thrown in, you're getting a new layer with a new disc, and then of course a reused driver, but the whole bay is meant to work much better and synergize much better with itself. Now then, what was I talking about with the different letters? This is one thing I do want to explain here. So I mentioned the K driver, kinetic. Why is this important? Well, we actually got every single driver, like a letter used for every driver except K. Well, we got things like keep, it was abbreviated as KP. We never got a proper K driver. And with kinetic, we would then have a proper K driver, and we then have all 26 letters, just single letters as driver abbreviations. As far as discs go, with the end of basic and, single and dual layers, we had 23 of the 26. In Cho sets, we would eventually get Zenith with Chozy Valkyrie acting as our Z disc, but we never got an E disc or an X disc. So, with Entropy and Exploit, we would have those, and then we'd have all 26 letters, again, just single letters used for every disc. So now all of the discs and drivers in that regard are completed. That's that. I didn't model the names entirely after just that, but I found things that work well with it and made sense that could also fit that niche as well, so it all happened to just work out, which I'm pretty happy about. And those are basically all of the changes that I have for these early bays. Alright, that is everything for this episode. Got all the intro stuff out of the way. And I have to change the 4 bays between the single and dual layer lines that I thought were not even bad, they just needed a little bit of a tuning up in my opinion. And yeah, that's it. I know this was not the craziest episode, it's again just meant to be a bit of a teaser, while also setting up everything that I need to. This is almost like a part 0, but it's only a part 1 because there were at least a few bays mentioned, but yeah. Things are going to get a lot more dynamic, we could say, once we get to Beyblade Burst God, because there's just a lot more to talk about there. And yeah, there just wasn't a lot for single and dual layers, which is why I combined them in the first place to one episode. Especially the intro episode, because there's really not a lot for them. But yeah, this is definitely more of a preview of what's to come. And there's definitely going to be a lot more happening in Beyblade Burst God. Definitely going to be a lot more bays that I think needs some alterations. And yeah, it'll just continue with that over time. So again, let me know what you thought of this. Again, I can't commission the things that happen, so that's one thing that is unfortunate and I can't really do much with. But if there's anything else I should do for these, let me know. But yeah, again, that's just it for this first episode. I'll be back at some point within the first half of May, though, to talk about Beyblade Burst God, which will be a fun time. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. It'll be a much more in-depth episode, because, again, there's just a lot more to Beyblade Burst God, so yeah. Anyways, that's all for this first episode, so yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.